As JJK has been on what feels like a forever break, I found myself rereading large sections of the story again, and a common theme is apparent. Hakari is viewed as one of our heaviest hitters, mentioned not only by Gojo but Yuta too, yet in comparison to some of our other cast and their recent upgrades, and in relation to the current story itself, well, he just sort of feels underpowered. So, why make a Hakari video? Although Hakari has been stalling Arame with very little coverage in relation to the other fights recently within JJK, I genuinely believe, agenda aside, that Kinji Hakari is the last of our cast to receive his massive power-up. Now, some people may say I'm just spouting headcanon on my favourite character in the series, but there is compelling plot points and foreshadowing left by Gege to allude to Hakari's potential power-up. And throughout this video, I plan to show some of the context I feel is the clear indicators for this power-up, while also drawing out the real-world connections that may allude to the future of our delinquent king, Kinji Hakari. So, who is Kinji Hakari? For those of you with reading comprehension skills, this section is just retreading ground you're already familiar with, so feel free to skip ahead. But for those of you which consume JJK through TikTok brain rot, here's a little explanation to Hakari and his kit. Firstly, Hakari is an absolute powerhouse in terms of longevity and survivability, thanks to his innate technique, Private Pure Love Train, and his domain expansion, Idle Death Gamble. But what do these techniques entail? Both abilities essentially work in tandem, allowing Hakari to open a pachinko-themed domain with the goal of matching 3 numbers to hit a jackpot. It is stated that there is a 1 in 239 chance of this happening, so to regularly activate this jackpot instance, the user must be extraordinarily lucky. Thankfully, Hakari is just that. In the event of Hakari hitting said jackpot, his power and potential soars, as he activates Unkillable mode. And this Unkillable mode does exactly as it says on the tin, effectively granting Hakari bonus unlimited cursed energy for the duration of Private Pure Love Train's theme song, which is a whopping 4 minutes and 11 seconds of immortality. This unlimited cursed energy instinctively heals Kinji by using RCT to heal any injury sustained during this stage of his technique. But what is pachinko? And how can you make an unkillable man stronger? Fasten your seatbelts, viewer, because we are about to drop down the rabbit hole of gambling in Japan. Although most forms of gambling in Japan are outlawed under the Criminal Code 23, there are instances where particular games are allowed, one of those being pachinko. Just like is referenced in JJK, pachinko's win condition is essentially matching 3 or more numbers or images to achieve a jackpot win. However, as you can imagine, each pachinko machine differs greatly, and methods of play may change, but in modern pachinko, the slot mechanic is always a staple. Additionally, the larger the number matched, the higher the payout, essentially meaning that 111 matched would yield less payout in comparison to a 777 matched payout. But how can we use this to theorise future developments in Hakari's kit and technique? Well, it's time for the 777 theory. By no means am I ignoring the panels detailing the intricacies of the technique in Chapter 181, however its content isn't really indicative of its outcomes in the story, so I intend to steer clear while still bearing it in mind. Hakari, up to this point in the story, has hit a match 333 jackpot against Charles, and a match 666 and 222 jackpot against our beloved Kishimo, so we still haven't specifically seen a 777 jackpot hit, leaving room for us to speculate on its potential reward for Kinji being so lucky. I am well aware of the fact that Gege could be straight up throwing us a red herring, and there is no difference between each jackpot instance, but that's so unbelievably boring I'm going to forget that it's even a possibility. So, what's the relevance of 777, and how do we even know he's capable of matching it? At the start of Chapter 183, Gege is nice enough to provide us with descriptions of each of the characters present on the numbers within Hakari's domain. The characters being the ones present in the pachinko game source material, a rom-com manga, Private Pure Love Train. Numbers 1 through 6 describe each respective character in the manga, with a small description beneath. However, that formula changes when we see 7's caption. 7. This work's main character has no features worth mentioning. This, to me, seems deliberately vague, and I think could be a giant hint for the 777 jackpot being a higher tier of reward compared to the others seen in the story so far. Let's cut the bullshit. Gege wouldn't attribute the number 7, the most important one out of all of the numbers we have been shown, to the main character, and then also give it no impact to the story whatsoever. I'm sure you can all agree that giving the main character the highest number with the most value and then not elaborating whatsoever on its effects, the character's effect in the source material, this is 100% a hidden meaning from Gege and something that we really should be drawing our attention to. Not only that, but it confirms Hakari can hit a 777, and that we still have not witnessed it to this point. So we can all take our tinfoil hats off, and to those not convinced, stay with me. But why is 777 more significant compared to the other match numbers in gambling? Using real-world examples of Europe, the US, and many parts of Asia, 777 is the symbol of a jackpot. But if every match number is a jackpot in Hakari's case, the 777 would likely allude to a potential super jackpot, unlocking further hidden potential that maybe Kinji wasn't even aware of himself. But, like I said earlier, how can you make an unkillable man stronger? And how would Gege give Hakari a balanced awakening in relation to the others that we've seen? So, the big question: how can we power up Hakari to match his peers' recent developments without making his kit broken? To do so, we need to look at Hakari's role in the story and his potential use in the climax of the Sukuna vs. Everyone fight. As we know him right now, Hakari is essentially a tank, being able to suck up damage and stall against whatever opponent he's facing, exactly like we are seeing in the Arame fight, using his stalling as an avenue for Kinji to work out how to beat his adversary, like in the Kashimo fight. Luckily for Hakari, his stalling is nigh on infinite, but unluckily, however, Gege has elaborated on the fact that Kinji is not an academic, and quite slow in terms of IQ. Just look at his test scores. So he needs all the time he can get to work out the more intelligent opponents. Realising Hakari's strengths in fights so far and his weaknesses bring me to the conclusion that the super jackpot could result in one of a couple of outcomes. Number 1. It's no secret Hakari's AP is much lower than the rest of the cast. Although yes, his immortality phases are incredibly powerful, he lacks the fight ending abilities and AP in other characters. Think Maki, Yuta, and most recently Yuji. So I believe that the super jackpot could further enhance his serrated bat-like cursed energy, further improving his lethality, in turn improving Hakari's AP. This feels like a natural progression, as Hakari's cursed energy output has been described as a serrated bat, which is a fairly severe thing to get hit by, and also a sandpaper, which is admittedly less impressive. Seeing another jump in its sharpness or impact would fit the narrative while also buffing Hakari in line with our other cast without becoming overpowered. Whereas option 2 puts Hakari in more of a supportive role compared to what we've seen from him so far. It comes back to this: how do you make an unkillable man stronger? And I think the most interesting and compelling means of doing so is by allowing Hakari to share that sweet immortality with his peers. Ladies and gentlemen, and all those in between, I'd like to introduce you to the world of shared winnings and the ideas of a betting syndicate. So, option 2, Hakari Syndicate. Before I break down the theory, it's important to define what a syndicate is. A syndicate is a group of people who come together in areas of betting, pooling funds in an attempt at profit. Now, I'm sure many of you have put 2 and 2 together and can see where I'm getting at. But for those that don't, Hakari sharing his RCT has been a theory in the JJK sphere for quite some time. But with Hakari's lack of intelligence and the lack of a better teacher, except Shoko and a soul swap, but that's a theory for another day, we would need to find a narrative plot point that would make sense and fit Kinji's character to allow him to do so. And I feel a form of a betting syndicate where Hakari can spin on behalf of other members and consequentially sharing the jackpots with those members makes so much sense thematically, narratively, and would certainly fit Hakari's gambling stylization of his abilities. Essentially, it could work like this. Hakari activates Idle Death Gamble. Those within, with Hakari's permission, of course, could offer a tithe or other value to Kinji, allowing him to spin on their behalf. The technique and then domain works as usual. Upon jackpot or super jackpot hit, all of those which tithe to Hakari receive a share of the infinite cursed energy. Now, I'm not saying the idea is perfect, as there are discrepancies, as Hakari has been known to reflexively heal via RCT, but what's stopping others being the same after Idle Death Gamble's success? Realistically, nothing. No one aside from Hakari has ever experienced that unlimited cursed energy from his jackpot win, so we have no sample size. This could just be the way that sorcerers' bodies react to infinite CE, and that's the headcanon that I'm going to pursue. Although this doesn't directly align with the 777 super jackpot theory, I still think that this, or the hit of the super jackpot, would be the catalyst to Hakari then unlocking the ability to share with his peers. My personal favourite theory, however, is focused around the fever that Hakari loves to mention. Throughout the series and all of Hakari's fights, we see mentions of this fabled fever, yet we've seen little exposition or narrative really defining what it is, or its purpose. What we do know is against tougher or stronger opponents, Hakari's fever spikes. I think this is entirely matched to how much difficulty the opponent is giving Kinji. Similarly to how Arame mentions that Sukuna's output is potentially linked to his excitement during conflict, I think Kinji's fever works in a similar way. The more an opponent pushes Hakari, the higher the fever burns, resulting in a more dangerous and lethal Kinji even outside of his domain and techniques. Parallels that can be drawn between Sukuna's appetite and Hakari's fever almost seem deliberate, and breaking it down further could hold the key to Hakari's future. Firstly, and most obvious, would be the link to interest within their opponents. Both appetite and fever seem to skyrocket in the presence of a worthy adversary. We saw Hakari mildly inconvenienced by Charles, stretched against Kashimo, and now really tested against Arame. Well, for 30 chapters at least. I think now is the time that Kinji's fever burns the hottest we've seen, pushing him to that awakening. But I think the most interesting connection between their characters is their attitude towards fighting, and their boredom or disdain nature towards fighting those deemed insignificant. Just like Sukuna, I feel we are yet to see Hakari go all out, like as kept being threatened in the recent chapters in Shinjuku. By realising the severity of the situation and the stage of the plan that our casts are in, I think Kinji will use Angel's Jacob's Ladder as a sign to get serious and end his conclusive stall with Arame. It makes far too much sense narratively to switch to the Hakari and Arame outcome, as without an end result soon, I fear two ridiculously powerful and interesting sorcerers would be wasted by Gege. I am praying that this is not ended off-screen, like many are predicting, and I have hope that Gege will give Hakari the ending he deserves. And finally, for all those who are still unconvinced on if Hakari is even due an awakening or a power-up, let's just look at this panel from 245. After already being rattled by just how proficient Hakari is with RCT, comparing him to the likes of both Sukuna and Gojo, Arame states how modern sorcerers are obsessed with remaining human, a topic heavily explored in the recent monster arc surrounding Gojo and Yuta and that whole transformation. What I'm trying to say is, in this panel, Arame is acknowledging that if Hakari lost his humanity and stopped holding back, he would understand his potential and overpower them, something that I'm convinced will finally happen soon. Now, I did sort of leave a lot out of these theories, and my headcanon and theory crafting goes a lot further in Hakari, but for the sake of the video and the fact that this has taken 5 months to get a 10-minute video out, I've sort of condensed it to make it run a little smoother. If by any means that you guys want more Hakari and you want these theories sort of broken down further and maybe sort of gone a little deeper into, let me know. I'm happy to talk about Hakari and I'm even happier to make videos on it, so just let me know in the comments below. Other than that though guys, that is me done. That's my waffle done on Hakari for the time being. Thanks all for sitting through it and watching, and make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll sort of try and get a video out soonish. No promises because I'm awful at timekeeping and my schedule's packed, but yeah, it may be 2 weeks, maybe another 5 months. Anyway, see ya.